It is October 1776. The British have been on Long Island for 6 weeks. Her husband left 3 months ago to join the militia, to carry dispatches, to do something that required him to be somewhere that was not here. She doesn't always know exactly where. What she does know, the soldiers quartered in the barn are getting louder at night. The neighbour 2 farms over just told her he signed the loyalty oath, and this morning a woman from the church arrived at her door, breathless, and said simply, "It is time to go." In the histories of the Long Island refugee crisis, this woman does not have a chapter. She is recorded, if at all, as wife of, followed by her husband's name. But she is the one who is standing in the kitchen right now, looking at 3 sleeping children and trying to decide what to take. She is the one who decides.
Welcome back to Northeast Cold Case. We have spent the previous episodes following the Long Island refugees, the battles, the crossings, the land claims, the enslaved and indigenous people swept up in the Exodus. Today, we are going to stay inside the house a little longer, because the people who actually held these families together, who made the decision to go, managed the crossing, and then rebuilt the social fabric of community in a new town, were, very often, women. Their names are harder to find in the records. That doesn't mean their stories are less important. It means we have to look more carefully.
In the summer and fall of 1776, a significant number of Long Island women found themselves making the refugee decision without their husbands. Men had left for the militia, for Continental Army service, for espionage work, for commerce that kept them away. Some had already been imprisoned on the British prison ships in Wallabout Bay. Some had already crossed to Connecticut themselves and were waiting for their families to follow. The Continental Congress's September 1776 resolution urging removal explicitly addressed women, children, and slaves, meaning the Congress understood that it was often speaking directly to women managing households alone. Under the legal framework of the time, a married woman's standing was defined by what lawyers called coverture. A married woman had no independent legal identity. Her property was her husband's. Her contracts were her husband's. She was, in the law's language, a feme covert, a covered woman, which meant that a woman deciding to leave Long Island with her children, her household goods, and whatever animals she could move, was making a decision that was legally, formally, not hers to make, and making it anyway. Connecticut historian Catherine Hermes has documented how patriot women throughout New England operated as deputy husbands during the Revolution, running farms, managing businesses, making financial decisions, and holding communities together while men were absent. The Long Island refugee women fit this pattern exactly, but under far more extreme circumstances. They were not simply managing a farm in a husband's absence. They were deciding to abandon it in the middle of the night under enemy occupation with children in their arms. What pushed them? Sometimes it was direct threat. Soldiers in the barn, a name on a loyalty oath list, a neighbor's warning. Sometimes it was the accumulating weight of months of harassment and surveillance. And sometimes it was the church network, that web of women who knew each other from Sunday services and who, in a crisis, moved information and assistance with remarkable efficiency. A woman who had heard from her minister's wife that 2 families from the congregation had already made it safely to New London, that a boat captain was willing, that there was a family in Connecticut who would take them in. That woman had what she needed to act. Not legal authority, real authority. We don't have children's diaries from these crossings. We don't have their letters. What we have are adult accounts written years or decades later, memoirs and family histories that sometimes include a line or two about what a grandmother remembered from her childhood, or what a grandfather told his grandchildren about the night they left. Those fragments are enough to reconstruct something of what this felt like for a child of 7 or 10 or 12. The decision to go would have come suddenly. Children in colonial households were not consulted about major decisions and were rarely fully informed. What they likely understood was the change in their mother's behavior, the quiet urgency, the way she was folding and packing things she normally didn't move, the hushed conversations with women from the church or with the neighbor who had come to the door. They may have been told they were visiting someone, or simply told to be quiet and do as they were told. The crossing itself for a child would have been primarily sensory, the smell of salt water and wet wood. The cold, October nights on Long Island Sound can be genuinely cold, and a whaleboat has no shelter. The sound of oars, the absence of light. If there were other children in the boat, the instruction not to cry, which, for a child being told that in the middle of a dark body of water, is both the most reasonable and the most terrifying thing anyone could say. And then the shore. A different shore than the one they knew. Sand that looked like Long Island sand. Grass that looked like Long Island grass, but not home. Some of these children grew up to become adults who could not easily explain to their own children why they had Long Island surnames but Connecticut memories. Who had fathers who went back after 1783, or fathers who didn't. Who grew up between two places in a way that left a particular kind of mark on the generations that followed them. Those are the genealogical traces that, when you find them in records from the 1800s, a Connecticut family with Long Island surname clusters, a gap in the Long Island branch that covers exactly the years 1776 to 1783, tell you that you have found a refugee family. Arriving in a Connecticut town was not arriving into nothing. For the women of these refugee families, it was arriving into a structure, the Congregational church, that was simultaneously religious, social, and practical. The Congregational church in 18th century New England was the center of community in a way that is difficult to fully appreciate today. It was where people were born into the social record through baptism, where they married, where they buried their dead, and where, every Sunday, the entire community gathered in a room and sat in assigned seats that encoded social rank, family relationships, and community standing. When a Long Island refugee woman arrived in a Connecticut town with a letter of transfer from her Long Island Congregational church, she was not a stranger. She was a member. She had a place in the pew. She had access to the minister. She had an entry point into the network of women who ran the church's charitable activities, the fund for the poor, the care for the sick, the assistance to new mothers. These networks did practical things that the official records rarely document. Midwives and experienced mothers helped refugee women through pregnancies and births in unfamiliar surroundings. Women who knew which local families had surplus food connected them with refugee families who had none. Information about housing, about which landowners might rent to a refugee family, about which Connecticut men were trustworthy. All of this moved through the women's networks of church and neighborhood. Colonial Connecticut women also contributed directly to the war economy. They spun and wove cloth for the Continental Army. They managed farms while men were away. They organized boycotts and local production campaigns. The women who arrived from Long Island, many of them with exactly these skills, were not burdens on Connecticut communities. They were workers, and the communities that received them knew it. What the records show, when you look for women specifically, is a quiet persistence. A Long Island surname appearing in a Connecticut church baptism record in 1777. A woman's name appearing in a town poor relief entry in 1778. A widow appearing in a deed record in 1780, negotiating a land arrangement in her own name because there is no husband present to do it for her. A cluster of Long Island surnames appearing in the same Connecticut congregation across a decade. Evidence not of individual survival, but of community, maintained by the women who wove the connections that kept it together.
The Long Island refugee story, as it has usually been told, is a story of patriot men, their politics, their property, their military service, their petitions to Congress. But when you follow the actual movement of these families, who decided to go, who managed the crossing, who navigated a new community, who rebuilt the relationships that made survival possible, you find women at the center of almost every significant moment. Not in the official records usually, in the church records, in the baptism entries, in the deed fragments, in the gaps between the named household heads where, if you look carefully, you can see the outline of someone who was doing most of the work. If your family includes women whose married names are Long Island surnames, but whose lives are recorded in Connecticut, women who appear in Connecticut church records, Connecticut land records, or Connecticut probate inventories between 1776 and 1790. Their story is the story we have been telling in this series. In episode 7, we'll look at Long Island refugees in Connecticut who supported the war effort back home. Leave your family's names in the comments, subscribe to Northeast Cold Case, and I'll see you in episode 7.